Strategy Sprint is back. That's right. This week-long virtual consulting project is back November 2nd to 8th. So it's a 1-week consulting experience where you get to serve a real client. You work in a small team, you get mentored and directed by a former McKinsey, Bain, or BCG consultant, and you just drive some really amazing impact. So why would you join Strategy Sprint? A couple of reasons. So number one, you get really great experience for your resume that makes you stand out in consulting applications or corporate strategy applications or otherwise. Number two, you build some amazing skills. And number three, you get to confirm if consulting is right for you before investing in the entire recruiting process, which can be 3 to 6 months or more. Join Strategy Sprint today at the link in this episode's show notes. Hope to see you on the project.
Just the thought of McKinsey interview questions are enough to strike fear in the heart of almost every consulting candidate. Today, I'm here to break down those McKinsey interview questions and some McKinsey behavioral questions to help you figure out what you're going to be asked, how to respond, and some common pitfalls to avoid. First, and most importantly, it's important for you to know that McKinsey behavioral questions really focus on assessing you across 5 different categories. These 5 areas of evaluation are personal impact, entrepreneurial drive, inclusive leadership, problem solving, and courageous change. Now, what's important to realize about a McKinsey interview is that you'll not only be asked standard behavioral questions, but you'll also be asked to go through something called the PEI, or the Personal Experience Interview. The Personal Experience Interview is one question around one experience on your resume, followed by 15 to 20 follow-ups. It's almost like a legal interrogation. And so in the McKinsey interview, you're not just asked standard questions that you'll be asked at almost every other firm, but you're also asked to do a deep dive into one specific experience that's on your resume. McKinsey cares not just about the breadth of your experience, but about the depth as well. So let's examine each one of these 5 areas of evaluation to uncover what McKinsey's really looking for. The first core value that McKinsey really cares about is personal impact. Here's an example of a question you might hear. Describe a challenging situation you encountered when working with someone who had an opposing opinion from you. Why would McKinsey ask a question like this, and why is one of their core values personal impact? It's simple, really. McKinsey does work that matters to its clients. They're not just interested in the skills that you've built, but they're interested in understanding how the skills you've built have been pointed towards something. There are a lot of people who have done interesting things, but not necessarily translated the interesting work they've done to some kind of real-world impact, either for the organization they worked for or for a client organization. So when McKinsey asks you if you've ever encountered a challenging situation working with someone who has an opposing opinion from you, they're looking to see how you'll act and respond inside of a consulting engagement. You will often run into people on your project team who have different opinions from you. You will absolutely run into client stakeholders who have differing opinions from you. And you'll also absolutely work with different stakeholders from the same client organization who have different opinions from each other. They all want to protect their own turf and have their own take on how things should happen. So do you have the political savvy to bring everybody together, get them on the same page, and align them towards a common goal or purpose? That's what McKinsey means by driving impact. The second core value that McKinsey really cares about is entrepreneurial drive. Now let me tell you what entrepreneurial drive is not. Entrepreneurial drive is not entrepreneurial or startup experience. That's not what McKinsey means by this core value. This core value should really be titled initiative. One of the questions that McKinsey may ask you is to tell them about a time that you worked to achieve something outside of your comfort zone. Did you take initiative to solve a problem that was outside or above your pay grade? Did you take on a leadership role that you weren't paid or graded to take on? And not only did you just take initiative to try something, but did you take initiative in a way where you achieved some kind of meaningful impact, whether for yourself or for a broader organization? So why does McKinsey even care about initiative? Or entrepreneurial drive, as they call it? Well, inside of a McKinsey engagement, you are going to own your own work stream. You're responsible for taking that work stream from beginning to end. You'll have support, but the ownership belongs with you. So you decide what your hypothesis is, you conduct the research, you build the model, you do the analysis, you extract insights, and your job is to figure out how those insights fit within the broader narrative that your team is going to bring to the client. Because of the unique setup of McKinsey engagements and just consulting engagements in general, a lot of independent work is required early on. If you don't take initiative, if you don't hold or exhibit what McKinsey calls entrepreneurial drive, you won't be a value add to project teams. The third core value that McKinsey really cares about is inclusive leadership. Here's a question that you might be asked in a McKinsey interview. Tell me about a time where you had to work well with people from diverse backgrounds. Now, why is this important, and why does McKinsey care about inclusive leadership? There are a couple of reasons. First, the environment at McKinsey itself is incredibly diverse. You'll be working with people of all ages, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all nationalities, all religions, all creeds. You need to have the ability to not just get along with everybody, but collaborate with people who might see the world a little bit differently than you do. Second, at McKinsey, you'll be working with incredibly diverse clients. They'll have different life experiences, different subject matter expertise, different personalities. They'll have different problems that they want solved. Those problems that they're looking for you to solve will stress them out in different ways. And so you have to have the ability and exhibit the ability to be able to handle and manage those different kinds of clients. When you work at McKinsey, you don't have a formal boss. Yes, there are partners. Yes, there are engagement managers. There are people you report to on a particular engagement, but those people change as you move from engagement to engagement. So you have a lot of influence inside the organization and on your project team, but no formal authority. And the same goes for your clients. You can influence them, and you should and need to influence them, but you can't actually make them do anything. So when you pursue a role at McKinsey, you're pursuing a role where you have a lot of influence, both internally and externally, but no formal authority. If you do not have the ability to be an inclusive leader, you're not going to succeed in that kind of environment.
What if you could find work that was meaningful, but didn't come with a standard toxic corporate workplace culture? At Palm Tree, we think we have exactly that, and our colleagues would agree. We're a consulting firm focused on the world of private equity and M&A. We do good work, and we're proud of that, but we also invest heavily into building a people-first culture. The investment in our people has resulted in high retention numbers across the firm since we started in 2010. If accounting, strategy, analytics, banking, and working with the world's smartest and kindest people sounds like the kind of work you'd enjoy, consider applying for a role at Palm Tree. Visit our careers page at palmtreellc.com or find the link in this episode's show notes for more information.
The fourth core value that McKinsey is looking for you to exhibit inside of your answers to their questions is courageous change. You'll be asked a question along these lines. Revisit a time when you experienced significant change or an ambiguous situation. Talk about the actions that you took to adapt and adjust. Now, why does McKinsey care about courageous change? Well, there are a couple of reasons. Number one, the problems that you're solving on the job at McKinsey are ambiguous. If they were clearly cut and clearly defined, there's a very good chance your client wouldn't be coming to you for help solving them. So one of the main skills that you need to have as a McKinsey consultant is the ability to deal with and handle ambiguous situations and solve ambiguous problems. Along with that, you're in a fast-paced professional environment when you're at McKinsey. So you're solving ambiguous problems, you're dealing with situations that aren't always the best defined, and the facts on the ground can change quickly even once you've started to figure out what you think you know. So if you don't have the ability to roll with the punches, you're not going to exhibit the speed to solution and the client management and executive presence chops that you'll need to succeed on the job. The last thing that I'll mention about courageous change is that your clients are coming to you with these big, hairy, ambiguous problems that they need an answer to. Oftentimes, the answers to these questions, the recommendations that you're making to your clients, will require them to be courageous in the way that they pursue change. If you can exhibit some kind of empathy, if you can understand, at least at a micro level, what it looks like to go through this process of courageous change, you'll have a better chance of communicating your recommendations and insights to your clients in a way that they'll be able to receive them and action them. The fifth and final core value that McKinsey is looking for you to exhibit is problem solving. Now, here's how McKinsey is going to assess you on this problem solving core value. They're going to ask you to discuss a hypothetical client scenario. This could be within the context of a case interview, or it could just be a conversation that you have with the interviewer. As you discuss a hypothetical client scenario and a problem that you would solve, the first thing that you'll be asked to do is define what the problem is. Oftentimes, your clients are dealing with incredibly big, hairy, and ambiguous problems. Can you put some definition around the problem and arrive at a problem statement that everyone can align around? If you don't know what you're solving for, you by definition cannot be good at problem solving. So your first goal is to determine what it is that you're solving for and what your key metrics of success are. After that, your second job is to define a structured problem-solving approach to arrive at a solution to the problem you've just defined. There are probably a million different ways that you could go about solving this problem. Your job is to put structure, organization, and logical thought behind the process you want to go through to arrive at an answer. Third, McKinsey's looking for your ability to identify the right data to look at as you go about your problem-solving approach. There are a lot of people that like doing analysis for the sake of doing analysis. Those people do not make good McKinsey consultants. Your job is to very quickly identify the right data to look at that will help you arrive at a solution for your client. The best candidates understand the implications of the analysis that they're doing and the data that they're looking at. They're not just going on a data hunt for the sake of doing analysis. Fourth, and finally, McKinsey cares a lot about your ability to crystallize a clear recommendation for your client. If you've done a good job of the first three steps that we've discussed, then your interviewer will have confidence in the process that you've taken to arrive at the recommendation. And if they have confidence in the process that you've taken, they're more than likely to have confidence in the conclusion that you've reached. Just make sure that you communicate it incredibly clearly and include some next steps for your client to take. If you can do these things, then you will exhibit to McKinsey that you are a problem solver to be reckoned with. Now that we've broken down these core values and the qualities that McKinsey is looking for you to display inside the McKinsey interview, how the heck do you prepare? Specifically, you should have 10 to 15 stories prepared before you walk into a McKinsey interview. We at Management Consultant call these stories hero stories. They're stories where you have achieved something notable, risen to the top in an environment, been the hero who solved a specific problem. These 10 to 15 stories should come from three distinct elements of your background. They can come from your education experience, they can come from your professional experience, and they can come from your leadership experience. The most successful candidates often have a mix of stories that come from each of those three categories. 5 from your education experience, 5 from your professional experience, and 5 from your leadership experience. Think through your experience, look through your profile, and really examine how and where you've solved problems inside of each of those 3 settings. And think through the problems that you've solved through the lens of the core values we've just discussed. Where have you displayed an ability to drive personal impact? Where have you displayed initiative? Where have you been an inclusive leader? Where have you been courageous in encountering change and helping others navigate change? As you think through those core values and those qualities, the stories that you should elevate inside of your interview prep will become apparent to you. As you think about the accomplishments that you've had in each of those realms, education, professional, and leadership, your next step is to put language around those accomplishments. We recommend using the CAR format to build your stories. CAR stands for context, action, results. So as you're putting your story together, your first job is to explain to the interviewer the context around the problem that you faced. Next, talk about the specific actions that you took to address the problem, not necessarily that your team or a broader group of people around you took. Remember, McKinsey's interviewing you, not everybody who you've ever worked with. And then finally, talk about the results of the actions that you took. CAR, context, action, results. If you follow this structure as you build your stories, they'll be easy to follow and compelling. Next, once you've developed your stories in the CAR format, make sure you know them inside and out. I've already mentioned how McKinsey interviews can sometimes look like legal interrogations. Be prepared for lots of follow-ups. You might be asked more about the problem that you faced or who it was that was experiencing that problem. You might be asked more about the specific actions that you took and what the implications of those actions were. Perhaps you'll be asked if you have to gain buy-in before taking a certain action, and you'll absolutely be asked follow-up questions around the results that you drove. If you don't know your stories inside and out, then you'll fold under the pressure of the follow-up questions. At best, you'll look unprepared. At worst, you'll look like you're lying. Finally, practice your delivery out loud. Remember, the McKinsey interview is an out loud test. The trap that many candidates fall into is that they write their stories out on paper, they type them out, they go over them time and time again inside of their heads, but they never take the final step of actually practicing out loud. Get with a partner, whether it's one of our coaches, whether it's a peer who's gone through the McKinsey process, and get feedback on your stories. Have them mock the experience that you'll have inside the McKinsey interview. Ask them if your story is linear, if it's logical, if it's easy to follow. Ask them to push back on you. Ask them to ask you follow-up questions and really get a sense for what the experience is going to be like in the McKinsey interview. You certainly do not want your first time delivering these answers verbally to be inside the interview itself. Now that we've talked about how to prepare your stories for the McKinsey interview, let me just quickly highlight a couple of pitfalls for you to avoid. First, leaving the structure that we've just talked about. The CAR structure is critical to ensuring that your stories are easy to follow, well thought out, and comprehensive enough to convince McKinsey that you exhibit the qualities that they're looking for inside of their best candidates. Just because you're telling a story, that's no excuse to take artistic license and leave the structure that we've talked about today. At the end of the day, McKinsey's not hiring a filmmaker, they're not hiring a podcaster, they're hiring a client advisor. And one of the ways that you get clients to take action and buy into what you're recommending to them is that your story is incredibly clear and easy to follow. If you don't have a structure that you're following, you're not going to succeed inside the McKinsey interview. Second, again, one of the big mistakes that we see candidates make is that they make their stories about the group. They make their stories about the team that they were working within instead of them specifically. Like I've already mentioned, McKinsey's hiring you, they're not hiring your team. So your hero stories should be hero stories where you're the hero, not where your team was the hero, not where your boss was the hero, but where you were the hero. Make sure your stories are specific to your accomplishments and the actions that you took to drive results. Third, and critically, your stories must be positive. Under no circumstances can you come across as negative. Under no circumstances can you come across as blaming others. And under no circumstances can you come across as a victim. Your job is to talk about the actions that you took that led to positive impact. You are not in the interview to make excuses. If you come across as negative, that's just a sure sign to McKinsey that you're not going to be a good fit inside the culture. If you come across as blaming others for results that you weren't expecting, then you're just telling McKinsey again that you're not the right candidate for them. And if you're going to come across as a victim, then all you're doing is communicating to your interviewer that you're not going to be a fun and responsible person to work with. So avoid these common pitfalls as you're preparing your stories for the McKinsey interview.
Hey, Strategy Simplified. Hope you're enjoying today's episode. Before we let you go, really excited to share a win that we've recently seen from somebody in our community. And to help me share the fun news, I've got my colleague Caleb Preston with me here today. Caleb, thanks for joining. How are you doing on today?
I'm doing awesome today. I always love coming on this podcast, so thanks for having me here, Japheth.
Yes. And I think the listeners are loving hearing from you as well. And so I'm looking forward to this segment. And so, Caleb, can you just dive right in? Tell us a little bit about who we're talking about here today, and then share what their recent success was.
Awesome. So Japheth, I'm excited to share about Mohammed today. So Mohammed is one of our Black Belt community members, and he actually is an MBA graduate, but the school that he went to is actually not a target school. So he was struggling to land coffee chats and network into some of his target firms, and had tried sending some emails, tried posting about LinkedIn, but it just wasn't working. It wasn't turning into coffee chats for him. So the big win that he had in our community recently was we had a masterclass all about how to send effective cold networking emails to people you don't have a relationship with. So in that masterclass, he learned, hey, who do I reach out to? When do I use email versus LinkedIn? We taught him how to find consultants' emails for free. We gave him an email template that he could take, and he was able to craft it with his own experience. And we also taught him, like, when can you send those emails to best ensure that they're going to land in the inbox and actually turn into a coffee chat. So he followed this process. We gave him some personalized support along the way, and he went from getting almost no responses to an 80% response rate from consultants at boutiques firms that are on his target list. And he was able to turn a lot of those responses into scheduled coffee chats where he's asking for the referral. So that was an amazing win, where he went from being just unsure of how to even get his foot in the door, networking wise, to having a system and a plan that's now scalable and he can use almost any firm. So I'm really excited to share that today. And we see that same success happening for other people in our community as well.
I love that, Caleb. I'm glad we're speaking about networking, because it's something that's so stigmatized, and often because of that, it's even ignored by a lot of candidates who don't realize its true power, especially in the super competitive recruiting environment that we're in today. So, Mohammed, well done on not only learning these tips and best practices for networking, but then actually going out and executing and following through on them. And super glad to hear about that 80% success rate. That's huge, and we look forward to helping you follow that through all the way to interviews and then eventually to an offer. So Caleb, I really appreciate the kind of the detail you shared there in Mohammed's story. And so folks listening on the call, if you recognize that networking is kind of a gap area, it's a weakness, it's something that overwhelms you, our team would love to work with you to provide this personalized support that Caleb was talking about. You can book a coaching call where a member of our MBB coaching team can walk with you to identify who are the right people for you to be reaching out to, when you need to be sending out this email, how, etc. So you can land those coffee chats and get your foot in the door at your target firms. So highly encourage you to look into Black Belt, linked in the show notes. It's our premium coaching program, includes the community, which Caleb oversees. So I hope this was encouraging, filled you with some motivation and hope to keep going. We're cheering you on. Please reach out, team@managementconsultant.com, if there's anything that we can do for you. Caleb, I appreciate your time. Do you have any final words of wisdom or encouragement for our listeners before we let them go?
No, just thanks for being here, and that, the opportunities, there's a lot of opportunity out there. So, and we really know how to help you harvest it. So we love the invitation opportunity to help you on the journey. And thanks for your time being on the session today. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Caleb. All right. Cheers.
See ya. Bye-bye.
If you'd like more tips, tricks, and guidance for navigating the McKinsey interview, then click the link below to learn more about our Black Belt program. Inside of Black Belt, a McKinsey coach works hand in hand with you to prepare not just for the behavioral interview questions, but the McKinsey case interview as well. Click the link in the description below to learn more about how the one-on-one mentorship and guidance can help you put your best foot forward for a McKinsey interview.